My name is Claire, I am 30 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb in the United States. I am sitting here in front of my camera, listening to the ring light buzz. It's the only sound in the room right now. But in my head, I can still hear the silence from that night. It was Christmas dinner. The table was set perfectly. The smell of roast beef and pine filled the air. My sister Marlene was holding my son Rowan. He was fussy. He is just a baby, he didn't know any better. Then it happened. Smack! Marlene's hand cracked across my infant son's cheek. The sound cut through the laughter. Rowan screamed, but the worst part wasn't the slap. It was what happened next. Nothing. My mother didn't gasp. My father didn't stand up. The room just went quiet. They looked at me. They were waiting for me to apologize. They expected me to say, "I'm sorry he's crying," or "I'm sorry he annoyed you, Marlene." That is how it always worked in my family. I was the one who had to fix everything. I was the one who had to shrink so my sister could shine. I froze. I couldn't breathe. But then a chair scraped loudly against the floor. My husband stood up. His voice was low, shaking with rage but steady. He looked straight at my sister. "Get out. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Claire. I am 30 years old. I want to tell you how I grew up. It is important so you understand why I froze when my sister hit my son. You need to know that for 30 years, I was trained to be a ghost in my own house. I grew up in a nice house with a big yard. From the outside, we looked like a perfect family. We had a mom, a dad, 2 daughters, and a dog. But inside, there was a rule that no one spoke aloud. The rule was simple. Marlene is the star and Claire is the audience. Marlene is 2 years older than me. She was born loud. She demanded attention from the second she took her first breath. My mother loved it. My mother always wanted to be an actress, but she never made it. So she made Marlene her project. Marlene was beautiful, I admit that. She had blonde curls and a smile that could make people do whatever she wanted. I was different. I was quiet, I had brown hair and brown eyes. I liked to read. I didn't like to perform. And because I didn't demand attention, I didn't get any. I remember my 10th birthday. That is a memory that stays with me. I had asked for a chocolate cake. My mom made a vanilla cake because Marlene didn't like chocolate. I remember sitting at the table, staring at the white frosting. My mom lit the 10 candles. Everyone started singing Happy Birthday. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes to make a wish. I was going to wish for a puppy, but before I could blow, I felt a rush of air. I opened my eyes. The candles were out. Smoke was rising from the cake. Marlene was leaning over the table, grinning. She had blown out my candles. "I helped you," she said, clapping her hands. I looked at my mom. I waited for her to say, "Marlene, that was mean. Relight them." But my mom just laughed. She said, "Oh, isn't she funny? She just wants to be part of everything. Come on, Claire, don't look so sour. Cut the cake." I looked at my dad. He was reading the newspaper. He put the paper down for a second, looked at me, and gave a small shrug. Then he went back to reading. That was the dynamic. Marlene did something selfish, Mom laughed and called it cute, and Dad pretended he wasn't there. It wasn't just birthdays, it was every day. If we took a family photo, Mom would spend 10 minutes fixing Marlene's hair. She would tilt Marlene's chin, smooth her dress, and tell her to smile brighter. Then, right before the camera clicked, she would glance at me and say, "Claire, try not to slouch, and move back a little, you're blocking your sister." I learned to make myself small. I learned that taking up space was a bad thing. In school, Marlene got into trouble a lot. She didn't do her homework. She talked in class. But my parents were always at the school defending her. They blamed the teachers. They said the teachers were jealous of Marlene's spirit. I got straight A's. I did my homework every night at the kitchen table while Marlene watched TV loudly in the living room. When I brought my report card home, my dad would sign it without really looking. My mom would say, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear that Marlene got the lead in the school play?" I wasn't neglected in the way people usually think. I had food. I had clothes. I had a roof over my head. But emotionally, I was starving. I felt like an extra in a movie about my sister. I was the background character who holds the door open or sits in the corner while the main character has her big dramatic scenes. I started to believe that maybe they were right. Maybe I was boring. Maybe I didn't deserve to be seen. I told myself that it was my job to be the easy one. If Marlene was high maintenance, I had to be low maintenance. If Marlene caused problems, I had to fix them. I thought that if I was good enough, quiet enough, and helpful enough, eventually they would notice me. I thought they would say, "Thank you, Claire, we see you." But that never happened. The quieter I got, the more they erased me. As we got older, the dynamic got worse. It shifted from emotional erasure to actual taking. Marlene learned that what was mine could easily become hers, and our parents would let it happen. When I was 16, I got my first job. I worked at a library after school. It was quiet work and I loved it. I saved every penny. I wanted to buy a car. I had my eye on a used Honda. It wasn't fancy, but it would be mine. It represented freedom. It meant I could drive away from my house whenever I wanted. I saved for 2 years. By the time I was 18, I had enough money. I kept the cash in a shoebox in the back of my closet. I counted it every night. One Friday, I came home from school ready to go to the dealership with my dad. I went to my closet. I pulled down the shoebox. It was light, too light. My stomach dropped. I opened the lid. It was empty. I ran downstairs. My mom was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. Marlene was sitting at the counter flipping through a magazine. She was wearing a new leather jacket. "Where is my money?" I asked. My voice was shaking. Marlene didn't even look up. Mom sighed. She put down the knife. "Claire, don't start a scene." "My money is gone," I said. $2,000, where is it?" Marlene needed a little help, Mom said casually. "She has that modeling audition in the city next week. She needed new headshots and some clothes. You know how expensive that industry is." I looked at Marlene. She was smirking. "It's an investment, Claire. When I'm famous, I'll buy you 10 cars." "That was my money," I whispered. "I worked for that." "We are a family," Mom said, her voice getting sharp. "We help each other. Marlene has a real chance at this. You don't need a car right now. You can take the bus to college." I looked at Dad. He just walked into the kitchen. I thought, this is it. He knows I worked for that money. "Dad," I said, "Marlene took my car savings." Dad opened the fridge and took out a soda. "Your mother thought it was best," he said. "Don't be selfish, Claire. Support your sister." Selfish. That was the word they used whenever I tried to keep something for myself. If I didn't give Marlene what she wanted, I was selfish. If I got upset that she stole from me, I was dramatic. It became a pattern. I went to college on a scholarship because my parents had spent my college fund on Marlene's acting classes and a trip to Europe she needed to find herself. In college, Marlene would call me late at night. She was always in some kind of trouble. She needed rent money. She needed me to write an essay for her community college class. She needed me to talk to her boyfriend because he was mad at her. I always did it. I sent the money. I wrote the essays. I fixed her messes. Why? Because I was conditioned to do it. I thought that if I helped her, my parents would love me. I thought that being useful was the same thing as being loved. I remember one Thanksgiving. I was 24. I had just gotten a promotion at my job. I was so proud. I bought a nice bottle of wine to bring to dinner. I wanted to make a toast. We sat down to eat. I stood up. "I have some news," I said. "I got promoted to senior analyst." "That's nice," Mom said, passing the potatoes. "Actually," Marlene interrupted, her mouth full of turkey, "I have news too. I'm going to start a YouTube channel," my mom gasped. She clapped her hands. "Marlene, that is amazing. You are going to be a star. Oh, we need to get you a good camera." "Dad, did you hear that?" Dad smiled. "That sounds like a great plan, honey." They spent the rest of the dinner talking about Marlene's YouTube channel that didn't even exist yet. They planned what she would wear and what she would say. No one asked about my job. No one asked what a senior analyst did. I sat there, drinking the wine I bought, feeling invisible again. Marlene turned to me at one point. "Claire, you can edit my videos, right? You're good with computers." "I work 60 hours a week," I said quietly. "See," Mom said, shaking her head. "Always so negative. You should want to help your sister succeed." I went home that night and cried in my car, but I still didn't stop. I didn't know how to stop. I thought this was just how families were. I thought I was the problem. Then I met Mark. Mark was different. He was quiet like me, but he was strong. He listened when I talked. He remembered what I liked. When I told him about my family, he didn't laugh, he frowned. "That's not normal, Claire," he told me. "They shouldn't treat you like that." "It's just how they are," I defended them. "They love me, they just love Marlene differently." "They use you," Mark said. I didn't want to believe him, but deep down, I knew he was right. When I got pregnant, I thought everything would change. I thought, this is it. A baby resets everything. A baby is a new life. They can't ignore a baby. I imagined my mom coming over to help me with the nursery. I imagined her knitting blankets. I imagined Marlene being an exciting, fun aunt. I thought my child would finally be the thing that made me valuable to them. I was wrong. When I told them I was pregnant, Mom said, "Oh, are you sure you're ready? Babies are expensive. You know Marlene is going through a hard time right now since she broke up with Brad. Try not to rub it in her face." That was the reaction. Don't upset Marlene. My pregnancy was difficult. I was sick a lot, I was tired. But my family barely checked on me. Marlene called me, not to ask how the baby was, but to complain that I wasn't available to drive her to the mall anymore. "You're so boring now that you're pregnant," she told me on the phone. "You just sleep all the time." "I'm growing a human," I said. "Whatever, you're using it as an excuse to be lazy." When I went into labor, Mark was with me. He was my rock. We were at the hospital for 20 hours. It was hard, painful work. But when my son, Rowan, was finally placed on my chest, I felt a love I had never known. It was pure. It was unconditional. I looked at his tiny face and promised him, "I will never make you feel invisible. I will never make you feel like second best." My parents and Marlene came to visit the next day. Marlene walked in, looked at Rowan in the bassinet and said, "He looks like a wrinkled alien." Mom laughed. "Marlene, you are terrible." But she was smiling. She didn't tell Marlene to be kind. She didn't coo over her grandson. She was too busy laughing at Marlene's jokes. They stayed for 20 minutes. Marlene spent 15 of them talking about a guy she met at a bar. Mom spent the other 5 telling me I looked tired and puffy. They left, and I felt a coldness in my chest. The months went by. I was exhausted. Being a new mom is hard. I needed help. I asked my mom if she could come over one Saturday so I could sleep for a few hours. "I can't," she said. "Marlene is having a crisis. She can't find her favorite boots and she's freaking out. I have to go help her look." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. My sister's lost boots were more important than my health. My sister's boots were more important than spending time with her grandson. That was the crack in the glass. That was when I started to really see them. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Rowan. I watched how they treated him. When we went to family dinners, if Rowan cried, Marlene would roll her eyes and turn up the TV volume. "Can you shut him up?" she would snap. "I'm trying to watch this show." Mom would look at me with disappointment. "Claire, he's very loud. Maybe you should take him to the other room. You're disturbing everyone." "He's a baby," I would say. "He's hungry." "Well, feed him somewhere else," Marlene would say, and I would do it. I would take my son and go sit in the guest bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, nursing him while my family laughed and ate dinner in the other room. I felt like I was back to being 10 years old, watching the candles go out. But this time I wasn't just sad. I was angry. I looked at my son. He was perfect. He deserved to be cherished. He didn't deserve to be the annoyance in the corner. He didn't deserve to be the extra chair. I realized that if I didn't change things, Rowan would grow up just like me. He would grow up thinking he didn't matter. He would think his job was to stay quiet so his aunt could shine. I couldn't let that happen. I could take the abuse for myself. I was used to it. But I would not let them break my son. That brings us to Christmas. Rowan was 10 months old. He was starting to crawl. He was babbling. He was a happy baby, mostly. But he was teething. His gums hurt. He was a little fussy. We arrived at my parents' house around 4 p.m. Mark drove. I held Rowan in the back seat. I had a knot in my stomach. I always had a knot in my stomach before seeing my family. Mark squeezed my hand before we got out of the car. "If they start anything," Mark said, "we leave, okay?" "Okay," I said, but I didn't really mean it. I never left. I always stayed. I always endured. Inside, the house was decorated perfectly. The tree was huge. There were gifts everywhere, mostly for Marlene. My mom had set up a ring light in the dining room because Marlene wanted to film a family Christmas vlog for her 300 followers. "Everyone needs to look happy," Marlene commanded as we walked in. She shoved a camera in my face. "Claire, smile. God, you look tired. Did you even put on concealer?" "Merry Christmas to you too," I said, shifting Rowan to my other hip. Dinner started an hour later. We sat down. The table was crowded. The ring light was buzzing in the corner, casting a bright, unnatural white glare over the food. It made everything look like a movie set, not a home. Marlene sat at the head of the table, even though that was usually Dad's spot. She was telling a long, loud story about a bartender who was obsessed with her. Rowan was in my lap. He started to whimper. He was chewing on his fist. "SHHH, buddy," I whispered. I gave him a teething ring. He dropped it. He let out a sharp cry. Marlene stopped talking. She glared at me. "Claire, seriously." "He's teething," I said. "I'm sorry." Well, control him, she said. I'm telling a story. He's a baby, Marlene. He doesn't care about your story, Mark said. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge in it. Marlene's eyes went wide. She wasn't used to people talking back to her. Excuse me, Mark, please, Mom said quickly. Let's just have a nice dinner. Claire, maybe give him a bottle, I tried. Rowan pushed the bottle away. He cried louder. He was in pain. I rocked him. I stood up to bounce him. Oh my God, Marlene slammed her fork down. This is ruined. The audio on my video is going to be all screaming. She stood up. She walked over to me. I thought she was going to yell at me. I braced myself for her words. She reached out. I thought she was going to grab my arm. Instead, her hand moved fast. Smack! She slapped Rowan right on his cheek. It wasn't a tap, it was a slap. The sound was a wet pop. Time stopped. I felt the vibration of the slap in my own body. Rowan went silent for a split second, the silence of shock before he inhaled to scream. I looked at Marlene. She looked annoyed, not sorry. There, she said. Maybe that will shock him into shutting up. I looked at the table. My mother was chewing her roast beef. She swallowed. She looked at me. Her face wasn't horrified, it was just waiting. My father was looking at his plate. No one moved. No one screamed at her. No one rushed to check on the baby. The silence stretched out. It was heavy and suffocating. It was the silence of 30 years of abuse. It was the silence that said, Marlene can do whatever she wants, and you have to take it. In that silence, I heard my mother's voice in my head from 1,000 other times. Don't overreact. She didn't mean it. Don't make a scene. I felt myself shrinking. I felt the old Claire trying to take over the Claire who would apologize, who would run away, who would cry in the bathroom and blame herself. But then I felt Rowan trembling in my arms. I looked at his cheek. It was turning red. There was a white imprint of her fingers. He was hurt. My sister hurt my baby because he interrupted her story. And my parents were watching it happen. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet one. It was the sound of a lock clicking into place. I didn't speak. I couldn't speak, but Mark did. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. It crashed onto the floor. The noise made Mom jump. Mark walked around the table. He didn't look at Mom. He didn't look at Dad. He looked straight at Marlene. He got very close to her face. Marlene took a step back, looking suddenly scared. Get out, Mark said. Excuse me, Marlene laughed nervously. This is my parents' house. You can't. You just hit my son, Mark said. His voice was like ice. Get out of my sight before I call the police. Oh, Mark, honestly, Mom said, waving her hand. She barely touched him. She was just frustrated. Don't be so dramatic. Mark turned his head slowly to look at Mom. She hit an infant, and you are defending her. She's high-strung, Mom said. Claire, tell your husband to calm down. You know how your sister gets. They all looked at me. Mom, Dad, Marlene, they were looking at the old Claire. They were waiting for the doormat. They were waiting for the scapegoat. I looked down at Rowan. I kissed his forehead. Then I looked up. I looked at my mother. I saw her for the first time. Not as the mom I wanted to please, but as a woman who would let a baby get hit to keep the peace. I looked at my father, the coward. I looked at Marlene, the bully. No, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was steady. What? Mom asked. No, I said again. I won't tell him to calm down. I turned to Mark. Grab the diaper bag. Claire, don't you dare walk out of here on Christmas, Dad said. It was the first time he had spoken. If you leave, you are ruining this family. I looked at him. This family was ruined a long time ago, I said. I turned around and walked toward the door. I could hear Marlene shouting behind me. You're overreacting, you're crazy. Go ahead and leave, no one wants you here anyway. I opened the door. The cold winter air hit my face. It felt good. It felt clean. I walked to the car. I buckled Rowan in. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from adrenaline. Mark got in the driver's seat. He looked at me. Are you okay? He asked. I took a deep breath. I looked back at the house. I could see them through the window. Marlene was crying now, acting the victim. Mom was hugging her. I'm done, I said. Drive. And as we pulled away, I realized something. The script had changed. They were still playing their parts, but I had walked off the stage. I wasn't the extra anymore. I was the writer of my own life now. And in my story, no one hits my son. That was the shift, but the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because people like my family don't let you go that easily. They don't like it when the prop stands up and walks away. They were going to try to pull me back. But I had a plan. The drive home from my parents' house was silent. Usually, after a family gathering, the car ride was filled with my nervous energy. I would ask Mark questions like, "Did I talk too much?" Or "Do you think Mom was mad about the salad?" Or "Was Marlene okay?" I would spend the drive dissecting every look and every word, trying to convince myself that I hadn't messed up. But this time, I said nothing. Mark drove with both hands tight on the wheel. He was angry. I could feel his anger radiating off him like heat, but it wasn't directed at me. That was a new feeling. Usually when there was tension, I assumed it was my fault. Tonight, I knew it wasn't. I sat in the back seat next to Rowan. He had finally stopped crying. He was asleep now, his head turned to the side. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. I shined it gently on his face. There it was, a red mark. It wasn't huge. It wasn't bleeding. But it was there. 4 distinct lines where my sister's fingers had made contact with his soft skin. My phone buzzed in my lap. Then it buzzed again, and again. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I looked at the screen. "Mom, where are you going? Turn around right now." "Mom, you are being ridiculous. Everyone is crying. You ruined Christmas." "Dad, Claire, answer your mother. You are overreacting." "Marlene, wow, nice drama queen exit. Hope happy." "Marlene, you embarrassed me in front of my followers. So selfish." I stared at the words. Selfish. Drama queen, ruined. The old Claire would have typed back immediately. The old Claire would have said, "I'm so sorry. We're just tired. We'll come back." The old Claire would have begged for forgiveness for the crime of protecting her child. But as I looked at the red mark on Rowan's cheek, the words on the screen didn't make me feel guilty. They made me feel cold. "Don't answer them," Mark said from the front seat. He saw the light of the phone reflecting on my face. "I'm not," I said. "I did something else instead." I opened the camera app. I took a picture of Rowan's face. I took 5 pictures, close up, from the side, with the flash, without the flash. "What are you doing?" Mark asked. "Evidence," I said. The word tasted strange in my mouth. Evidence. You collect evidence against criminals. You collect evidence for lawsuits. You don't collect evidence against your family. But they weren't acting like family. They were acting like a system designed to crush me, and I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. We got home. The house was dark and quiet. It felt like a sanctuary. We carried Rowan inside and put him in his crib. I stood over him for a long time, just watching his chest rise and fall. I put some ice gently on his cheek, even though he was asleep. He stirred but didn't wake up. We went into the kitchen. Mark poured a glass of water. He drank it in one gulp. "I'm sorry I shouted," he said. "Don't be," I said. "You were the only one who spoke the truth." I sat down at the kitchen table. I didn't take off my coat. I felt like I was on a mission. "I need my laptop," I said. Mark looked at me. "Claire, maybe you should sleep. You're in shock." "No," I said. "If I sleep, I might wake up and think I imagined it. I might wake up and let them convince me it wasn't a big deal. I need to write it down, now." Mark nodded. He went to the study and brought me my laptop. I opened it. The screen glowed blue in the dark kitchen. I created a new folder. I named it The Incident. Inside that folder, I started a document. I didn't write a diary entry. I didn't write a poem about my feelings. I wrote a report. Date, December 25th. Time, approx 6:30 p.m. Location, parents' dining room. Witnesses, Mom, Dad, Marlene, Mark, me. Event. Marlene struck Rowan, 10 months old, on the left cheek with an open palm because he was crying while she was filming a video. I typed it out. Seeing it in black and white made it real. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a joke. It was assault. Then, I went further back. I realized that this slap didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because for 30 years, Marlene was never told no. I started a new document, timeline of behavior. I started typing memories. Things I had pushed down. Things I had made excuses for. 2015. Marlene stole my credit card to buy concert tickets. Mom said, "She just wanted to have fun, don't be stingy." I never got the money back. 2018. Marlene got drunk at my graduation dinner and made a toast about herself. Dad laughed and said she was the life of the party. 2020. Marlene told my fiancé, Mark, that I had slept around in college, a lie to try and make him jealous. Mom said, "She's just protective of you." 2023. The pregnancy comments. The insults about my body. The refusal to visit Rowan in the hospital because she had a headache. I typed for 3 hours. My fingers flew across the keys. Mark sat across from me. He didn't speak. He just sat there being a witness. Sometimes he would reach out and hold my hand when I stopped to breathe. I went to my phone. I took screenshots of the texts they sent me tonight. I took screenshots of old texts where Marlene called me names. I emailed them all to myself and saved them in the folder. I felt like a detective building a case. And in a way, I was. I was building a case against my own guilt. I knew what would happen tomorrow. They would call. They would gaslight me. They would say it didn't happen like that. They would say you remember it wrong. They would say you are crazy. But I would have the folder. The folder was my anchor. Around 2 a.m. my phone rang again. It was my dad. I looked at Mark. Should I answer? Do you want to? No, then don't. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came from Mom. Mom, we need to talk. Come over tomorrow morning, just you. Leave Mark at home, he is too aggressive. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Mark was aggressive. Mark, the gentlest man I knew. They wanted him gone because he was the only one who didn't follow their script. They wanted to get me alone. They knew they could break me if I was alone. I typed a reply. My fingers didn't shake. Me, we will come over at 10 a.m. Mark is coming with me. If you don't want him there, I'm not coming. I watched the 3 dots appear. They disappeared, then appeared again. Mom, fine, just come. We need to settle this. I closed the laptop. I felt exhausted, but I felt clear. I wasn't going there to apologize. I wasn't going there to settle things in their way. I looked at the folder on my screen one last time. The incident. I wasn't the crazy sister anymore. I wasn't the sensitive daughter. I was a mother with a file. I'm ready, I told Mark. For tomorrow? No, I said, for the rest of my life. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep much. I lay awake, listening to the wind outside. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my anger. I thought about all the times I had said, it's okay, when it wasn't okay. I imagined my heart as a house. For years, I had let my family walk in with muddy shoes. I let them break the furniture. I let them eat all the food and leave the dishes. And I just cleaned up after them, thankful that they visited at all. Tonight, I was changing the locks. The next morning, the sky was gray. It looked like snow. I dressed carefully. Usually when I went to my parents' house, I dressed for comfort. I wore jeans and a sweater. I tried to look harmless. Today, I wore a blazer. I wore my boots with the heels. I put on makeup. Not to look pretty, but to look like armor. I wanted to look like the professional woman I was, not the little girl they remembered. Mark wore a button-down shirt. He looked serious. We left Rowan with Mark's sister. I didn't want him anywhere near that house. I didn't want him to absorb the toxicity in the air. The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like 20 years. My stomach was twisting. The conditioning ran deep. My brain was telling me, you are in trouble, you made mommy mad, you need to fix it. I had to actively fight those thoughts. I had to remind myself I am 30 years old. I pay my own bills, I am a mother. I am not in trouble, they are. We pulled into the driveway. Marlene's car was there. Of course, I looked at the house. It used to look like home. Now it just looked like a building made of bricks and secrets. Ready? Mark asked. I clutched my laptop bag. Yes. We walked to the door. I didn't knock. I used my key. We walked in. They were in the living room. It was staged just like the dinner. Marlene was lying on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket. She had a box of tissues next to her. She wasn't crying, but she looked like she was preparing to. She was wearing old sweatpants, playing the role of the fragile victim. Mom was sitting in the armchair next to her, stroking Marlene's hair. Dad was standing by the fireplace, looking stern. When we walked in, the conversation stopped. You're here, Mom said. Her voice was tight. We're here, I said. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't sit down. Mark stood next to me, his arms crossed. Well, sit down, Dad said. Let's handle this like adults. I prefer to stand, I said. Marlene sniffed loudly. I can't believe you brought him, she said, pointing a shaking finger at Mark. He threatened me, Mom. He practically attacked me. I told you to leave, Mark said calmly. That's not an attack, that's an eviction. Stop it, Mom snapped. We are not here to fight, we are here to heal. Heal, that was her favorite word. It meant sweep it under the rug. Claire, Mom started, turning her focus to me. She used her soft voice now. The voice she used when she wanted me to do something for her. Honey, look at your sister. She has been crying all night. She is devastated. I looked at Marlene. She didn't look devastated. She looked annoyed that I wasn't groveling. She feels terrible, Mom continued. She was just stressed yesterday. The holiday, the video, the pressure. She just snapped. She didn't mean to hurt Rowan. It was a reflex. A reflex? I asked. A reflex is blinking when someone throws a ball at you. A reflex isn't slapping a baby across the face. You're exaggerating, Marlene said. I barely touched him. He cried because he's a crybaby. Just like you. Marlene, Dad warned, but there was no heat in it. He had a mark on his face, I said. Oh, please, Mom waved her hand. Babies get marks all the time. You probably pinched him to make it look worse. The accusation hung in the air. You probably pinched him. My own mother thought I would hurt my son to frame my sister. That was the moment the last thread snapped. Any tiny hope I had, any small, foolish wish that they might actually apologize died right there. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked over to the coffee table. I unzipped my bag. What are you doing? Marlene asked. I took out my laptop. I opened it. I also took out a manila folder where I had printed everything just in case. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to show you why things are going to change. Change? Dad narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? I'm talking about consequences, I said. I placed the folder on the table. For 30 years, I said, Marlene has done whatever she wants, and for 30 years you have asked me to clean up the mess. You asked me to pay for it. You asked me to forgive it. You asked me to be the bigger person. I looked at Marlene. I am done being the bigger person. Being the bigger person just means standing still so you can hit me easier. Oh my God, here comes the speech. Marlene rolled her eyes. You always have to make everything about you, Claire. Poor Claire, the victim, it's pathetic. Read the folder, I said. I'm not reading your stupid diary, Marlene spat. Then I'll read it for you, I said. I opened the file on my laptop. December 25th, assault of a minor. Assault, Mom shrieked. Don't use that word, it's family. It is assault, I said. If a stranger did it in a grocery store, you would call the police. But because it's Marlene, you call it a reflex. I pulled up the photo of Rowan's cheek. I turned the laptop around so they had to see it. The red handprint was undeniable. Mom looked away. Dad stared at it, his jaw working. Marlene glanced at it and looked bored. So, Marlene said, he's fine now, isn't he? Did he die? No, get over it. The room went cold. Mark took a step forward. I put a hand on his chest to stop him. This was my fight. You're right, Marlene, I said softly. He didn't die, he is fine, but our relationship, that is dead. What do you mean? Mom asked. Her voice trembled slightly. She sensed a shift. She realized this wasn't like the other times. I wasn't crying. I wasn't asking for approval. I mean, I said, that I am done. I am stepping out of the role you gave me. You can't just. What? You're not going to talk to us? Dad asked. Over one mistake. It's not one mistake, I said. It's 1,000 mistakes. It's the stolen money. It's the insults. It's the neglect. It's the fact that yesterday, when my son was hit, not one of you asked if he was okay. You only cared about Marlene's video. We were in shock, Mom argued. No, I said, you were in character. I looked at them, really looked at them. I have a timeline here, I tapped the folder. Of every time Marlene took from me and you let her. Every time she hurt me and you blamed me. I wrote it all down last night. And reading it, it made me sick. It made me realize that this isn't love. This is a hostage situation. You are being so dramatic, Marlene yelled. She stood up, throwing the blanket off. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me. You're jealous that Mom and Dad like me better. The room went silent. She said the quiet part out loud. Mom gasped. Marlene, but Marlene didn't stop. It's true. Everyone knows it. I'm the fun one. I'm the talented one. You're just. Claire, you're boring, you're plain, and now you're trying to ruin my life because you're bitter. I looked at my sister. She was red-faced, screaming, ugly in her rage. I'm not jealous, Marlene, I said calmly. I'm exhausted. I closed my laptop. I put it back in the bag. I am leaving, I said. Do not contact me. Do not come to my house. Do not call me. Claire, you can't do this. Mom started crying. Real tears this time. Whatever you want, we'll do it. Marlene, apologize to your sister. No, Marlene screamed. Apologize, Dad yelled. His voice boomed. Marlene looked shocked. Dad never yelled at her. Fine, Marlene huffed. She looked at me with dead eyes. I'm sorry I hit your brat. Happy, I looked at Mom. Is that the apology you wanted me to accept? Mom looked down. Goodbye, I said. I turned around. Mark opened the door for me. Claire, Mom shouted. If you walk out that door, you are breaking this family apart. I paused at the threshold. I looked back at the three of them, trapped in their dysfunction, miserable in their perfect living room. I'm not breaking it, I said. I'm escaping it. I walked out. I closed the door, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I want to tell you what it feels like to cut off your family. People think it's like a movie explosion. They think it's a big fight with screaming and throwing vases, and then you storm out and feel like a superhero. It wasn't like that for me. When the door clicked shut behind us, I didn't feel like a superhero. I felt like I was going to throw up. My legs were shaking so bad I could barely walk to the car. Mark had to hold my elbow to keep me upright. We got into the car. I locked the doors. I sat there, staring at the dashboard, waiting for the feeling of relief. It didn't come. Instead, panic came. "Oh my God," I whispered. "I actually did it." "You did," Mark said. He started the engine. "They're going to hate me," I said. "They're going to tell everyone I'm crazy. Aunt Linda, Grandma, the cousins. Marlene is going to post about it. They're going to destroy me." "Let them talk," Mark said. "We know the truth." "But did I go too far?" I asked. "Maybe if I just set some boundaries. Maybe if I just told them no Christmas this year." Mark stopped the car at the end of the driveway. He put it in park. He turned to me. "Claire," he said, "look at me." I looked at him. My eyes were blurry with tears. "She hit Rowan," Mark said. "She hit him, and they blamed you." He repeated it. "They blamed you." The fog in my brain cleared a little. "You're right," I said. "You're right." "We are not going back," Mark said. "I promised to protect you and Rowan. I failed yesterday because I didn't see it coming. I won't fail again." We drove home. The confrontation was over, but the fallout was just starting. By the time we got home, my phone was exploding again. It wasn't just Mom and Dad this time. It was Aunt Linda. It was my cousin Sarah. It was random family friends. "Aunt Linda, your mother is hysterical. How could you be so cruel? Call her immediately." "Cousin Sarah, Marlene posted a video crying saying you attacked her. What is going on?" I felt the urge to reply. I felt the urge to defend myself. "No, that's not what happened. Let me explain." But then I remembered the folder. I remembered the timeline. Explanation is a trap. When you explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you are just wasting your breath. "I need to block them," I said. "Do it," Mark said. I sat on the couch. I opened my contacts. Mom, block. Dad, block. Marlene. Block. Aunt Linda, block. With every tap I felt a little lighter. And a little sadder. I was essentially orphaning myself. I was cutting the cord. "What do we do now?" I asked Mark. The house was quiet. It was just us and the baby. "We live," Mark said. "We have lunch, we play with Rowan, we watch a movie." Just like that, just like that. It sounded impossible. How could I eat lunch when my family was imploding? But we did. I made sandwiches. We sat on the floor with Rowan. He was happy. He didn't know his family was at war. He just knew his mom and dad were there and he had his toys. I watched him stack blocks. He knocked them over and laughed. I realized something profound in that moment. My parents chose Marlene. They had always chosen Marlene, but I chose Rowan. And Mark chose me. That was the new family structure. We were a triangle, solid, strong. Around 4 p.m. the doorbell rang. My heart stopped. I looked at the door. "Don't answer it," Mark said. He stood up and went to the window. He peeked through the blinds. "It's your dad," he said. I froze. "Is he alone?" "Yes, my dad. The neutral one, the one who just read his paper, the one I always secretly hoped would save me. "Maybe I should talk to him," I said. "Maybe he understands. He yelled at Marlene earlier." "He also told you not to leave," Mark reminded me. The doorbell rang again. Long, insistent. "Claire, open the door." Dad's voice came through the wood. "I know you're in there." I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I stood on the other side. "Go away, Dad," I said. "Claire, this is ridiculous," he said. "Your mother is sick with worry. You need to come back and apologize. We can fix this." "Apologize?" I laughed. "I need to apologize for my son being hit." "You need to apologize for the way you spoke to us," he said. "You were disrespectful." There it was, the core of their belief system. My disrespect was worse than my sister's violence. My refusal to be a victim was worse than her making me one. "I'm not opening the door, Dad," I said. "Go home." "If you don't open this door," he said, his voice getting lower, "don't bother coming to the Easter reunion. Don't bother asking for help when you need it. You are on your own." "I've been on my own for 30 years, Dad," I said. "I just finally realized it." Silence. Then I heard his heavy footsteps walking away. I heard his car door slam. I heard the engine start and fade away. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest. I cried then. I cried for the dad I wanted, not the dad I had. I cried for the little girl who kept waiting for him to put down the newspaper and look at me. He came to my house, and he still didn't see me. He only saw a rebellious daughter who needed to be put back in line. Mark came over and sat next to me. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around me. "They're gone," I whispered. "Yeah," Mark said, "they're gone." It felt like a death. But as the tears stopped, I realized something else. The knot in my stomach, the one that had been there since I was 10 years old, was loosening. The fear of what will they say was gone because they had already said the worst. The dread of the next holiday was gone because I wasn't invited. I was sad, but I was safe. For the first time in my life, my home was a fortress, and I held the only key. The first week was the hardest. It's like withdrawal. When you are used to high drama, chaos, and constantly managing other people's emotions, silence feels suspicious. I kept checking my phone, expecting the nasty texts, but they were blocked. I kept waiting for the guilt to crush me. I had phantom ring syndrome. I would hear a phone ring and jump, my heart racing. I had trouble sleeping. I had nightmares that I was back at the Christmas table, but this time Marlene hit me, and I couldn't move. But slowly, the silence began to change. It went from being scary to being peaceful. I woke up on Saturday morning. Usually, Saturday mornings were spent running errands for my mom or listening to Marlene complain on the phone for 2 hours. This Saturday, I woke up. The house was quiet. Mark was making pancakes. Rowan was playing in his playpen. There were no demands, no drama, no crisis. I poured a cup of coffee, I sat by the window, I watched the snow fall. Is this what normal people do? I asked Mark. Just relax, Mark smiled. Yes, this is normal. I started to discover who I was without them. I realized I had a lot of free time. I used to spend 10 to 15 hours a week just managing my family, talking to them, driving them, worrying about them. Now those hours were mine. I started reading again. I finished a book in 2 days. I started taking long walks with Rowan. I started focusing on my work. My boss noticed. You seem more focused, Claire, she said. You seem lighter. I was lighter. I had dropped 300 pounds of dead weight, but there were still tests. 2 weeks after the incident, a package arrived. It was from Mom. It was a gift for Rowan, a stuffed bear, and a note. For my grandson, I hope his mother stops being stubborn so I can see him. It was a jab wrapped in a gift. It was a manipulation. Look how nice I am, sending a gift. Look how mean you are, keeping him away. I stared at the bear. It was cute, Rowan would like it. A part of me wanted to keep it. It's just a bear, I thought, it's from his grandma. But I knew it wasn't just a bear, it was a foot in the door. If I kept it, I would send a thank you note. Then she would text, then she would ask to visit, and we would be back in the cycle. What do you want to do? Mark asked. I looked at the box. Donate it, I said. Are you sure? Yes. I don't want anything in this house that comes with strings attached. We took the bear to a shelter that afternoon. That was my first victory of the aftermath. I declined the guilt. Then came the social media smear campaign. My friend Jessica sent me screenshots. Even though I told her not to, she couldn't help it. Marlene had posted a long video. She was crying fake tears. She said her sister had abandoned the family and kept her nephew hostage because of a misunderstanding. The comments were full of people saying, "Oh, poor Marlene. Your sister sounds toxic. Stay strong." Seeing strangers call me toxic hurt. My face got hot. I wanted to make my own account. I wanted to post the photo of the slap mark. I wanted to post the timeline. I started typing a post. Here is the truth about my sister. My finger hovered over the post button. I looked at Mark. He was reading a book to Rowan. They were laughing. If I posted this, I would be dragging the drama back into my living room. I would be engaging. I would be giving Marlene exactly what she wanted, attention, a fight, content for her channel. I deleted the draft. I put the phone down. I chose peace. Silence, I whispered to myself. Silence is the answer. Let them talk. Let them lie. The people who matter, Mark, my close friends, the people who actually know me, they know the truth. I didn't need to win the internet argument. I just needed to win my life back. That night, I slept through the night for the first time in years. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full. It was full of safety. It was full of love. I looked at myself in the mirror the next morning. The tension lines around my eyes were fading. The tightness in my jaw was gone. I looked like myself again, not the invisible child, not the scapegoat, just Claire. It has been 1 year since that Christmas. I want to tell you how the story ends, but end isn't the right word. Life keeps going. It has been a year of firsts. The first Easter without them. We went to a park and had a picnic. It was lovely. No one criticized the food. No one fought. The first birthday for Rowan. We had a small party, just friends and Mark's family. There was no competition. No one blew out his candles. It was just about him. My parents tried a few more times. Dad showed up at my office once. I saw him in the lobby. My heart hammered, but I didn't go down. I asked security to tell him I was busy. He left. It was hard. I felt like a bad daughter. But then I remembered. He is a bad father. A good father doesn't ambush you at work to pressure you into accepting abuse. Marlene never apologized. I heard through the grapevine that she tells people I had a mental breakdown. That's her narrative. It protects her ego. I let her have it. If thinking I'm crazy helps her sleep at night, fine. I sleep just fine knowing I'm sane. I did go to therapy. I needed to unpack 30 years of baggage. My therapist told me something that changed everything. Claire, she said, you are waiting for them to realize what they lost. You want them to wake up one day and say, "We miss Claire, we were wrong." Yes, I admitted. I do want that. They might never do that, she said. Narcissistic family systems don't self-reflect. They just find a new scapegoat. Can you be okay if they never understand? That was the hardest part of the journey. Accepting that I would never get the validation. I would never get the "I'm sorry." I had to forgive them. Not for them, they didn't deserve it. But for me, forgiveness didn't mean letting them back in. It meant letting the anger go. It meant untying the knot. It meant looking at my phone on Christmas morning and not waiting for a text. This Christmas, the 1-year anniversary, was the real test. I woke up. The house smelled like cinnamon rolls. Mark had the holiday music playing. Rowan, now almost 2, was running around in clumsy circles, laughing. I felt a pang of sadness. I missed the idea of a big family. I missed the nostalgia of the house I grew up in. But then I thought about what was actually happening in that house right now. Marlene was probably screaming about her hair. Mom was probably stressing about the turkey. Dad was probably hiding in the garage. The air would be thick with tension. I looked at my living room. It was messy. There was wrapping paper everywhere, but it was warm and it was safe. Rowan ran up to me. He held up a toy car. "Mama, vroom." I picked him up. I kissed his cheek, the cheek that was once slapped. It was perfect now, rosy and soft. He would never know what it felt like to be the extra child. He would never know what it felt like to be erased. I had broken the cycle. It cost me my parents. It cost me my sister. It cost me my history. But looking at my son's smiling face, I knew the price was worth it. I walked over to the window. I looked out at the snow. I imagined my old self standing there. The quiet girl. The girl who tried so hard to be good. I whispered to her, "You can rest now. You don't have to fight for a place at the table anymore. We built our own table." I turned back to Mark and Rowan. "Who wants hot chocolate?" I asked. "Me," Mark said. "Chocolate," Rowan yelled. I walked into the kitchen. I didn't look at my phone. I didn't check my email. I was just Claire. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. If you are listening this, and you are the Claire of your family, if you are the one who stays quiet, the one who fixes things, the one who takes the blame, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. And the silence on the other side of the door, it isn't lonely. It is freedom.